Okay, so here we are in EU in turn 29, 1630. The monarchs, the Russian monarch died due to the dynastic crisis event. That actually eliminates the dynastic crisis for this turn because they didn't get another one. It's kind of a neat effect, an accepted succession or something, I don't know. For what else? The French got diplomatic preeminence, which gives them an advantage in diplomacy, but mainly gives them a column shift on colony and trading post placements. That's the more useful thing, perhaps. And, okay. Persia declared war on Turkey. I'm going to set that up. Again, and, you know, the Turks are glad they haven't gotten themselves involved in anything yet they couldn't get out of, because they're going to have to build up another army and fight another war with the Persians. They were kind of hoping for another turn to go by and then finish off the Mamluks and then work from there to see where they go. Where they go might well be targets of opportunity, most especially something like maybe Poland, if Poland is tied up in something, or Spain. The Habsburgs have too much of an advantage against them by being able to just declare war whenever. You know, the Turks can't hold the Habsburg territory, and it's bad for them to be there, I think. Even if they have victory conditions that say they want to be there, they can't afford to try to hold it all game. Okay, Spanish got Olivares, a excellent minister. Among other things, he gave them this art counter, which will increase their income a little bit, an extra ship. And he's, I think, an 8, 9, 7. He's only going to last 3 turns. Max, he can last is 6. You roll a die and see how far. And then, yeah, there was an event, Scots, personal union between Scotland and England. This is really how England ends up inheriting the Scottish throne. Unfortunately, because Scotland's at war with England right now. Well, actually, they're not at war. That's a military alliance. I'm going to have to look at this and think about it a little bit more. I thought the event was just boned, but they may have actually inherited it, because these are just expeditionary corps. Let me look. Yeah, as far as I can see, they're not technically at war. So I'm going to say that this does happen. Essentially, the Scots are the heir to the English throne at this point. How that will work out, well, let's look, because I kind of skipped it seeing the events. Monarch of Scotland, a non-aggression treaty becomes immediately in effect. They can no longer declare war against each other. Well, they're not at war, so I don't think it affects the intervention. At the moment the English monarch dies, Scotland becomes a permanent vassal of England, whatever its current situation. If Scotland is currently at war, its opponents must either accept a white peace or declare a war against England. See, but they, I don't know, because they can go to peace with them. That's the problem. I'm just going to say it's boned because they are active in this war, and I think trying to read this as not being at war, even though they can't be invaded by the English, I just don't see the English choosing a Scottish ruler given this situation. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just going to say it's boned because they're actually in a military engagement. Because the definition of war, you know, like many things in this game, the definition of war is not very clearly determined. Maybe you couldn't try to get peace with these interventionist countries. That seems silly to me. On the other hand, if you can't have peace, can you have war? I don't know. I could go dig through the rules and look. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. Okay, not a lot changed here in the diplomacy phase. The French made an attempt to get Sweden in, but it failed by 1. And they brought Savoy in an expeditionary corps capacity only, which isn't too big a deal. They're getting a small fleet to help them against piracy. They suffered piracy from the Turks. They were going for domination of the Mediterranean. And they're a little worried about that. But, you know, to tell you the truth, if they put their fleet out there, it's going to get sunk by the Spanish fleet, so they'll just take a land unit instead. So that's all that happened in terms of gaining anything, and that's not a lot for them. On the other side, the Spanish made an attempt on getting the Palatinate to join them, not in the war, but to up their diplomatic status. They have a very good diplomat as their leader. I think they lost their leader this turn and got a slightly better one or something. I don't know. They have Oliveras, though. Anyway, with that 9 diplomacy, they thought they had a shot at it. With 50 bucks, they threw it in. And they did not get a good roll there. I think they got 1 level. Actually, I have to recalculate that. But not enough to bring them into the war next turn, so that's not going to be of any help to them. Everything else pretty much stayed the same. No one had anything, either the money to expend on it or the real desire to gain more diplomatic status over here. And certainly nobody had any big actions they want to take. The Dutch are the only people who are free right now from any problems, and their stability is so low and their money is so weak. They want to try to build up and get themselves into a position where they can actually, you know, be a player again. Okay, so we're done with the economic and administrative stuff. I see some interesting things beginning to crop up in the midst of all this warring. The French are grabbing a big hunk of North America. The English, however, are making a denser coastline there. Meanwhile, English and Dutch increasing their trading post sizes here. What else? Well, the Spanish are so low on money, they tried to scrape things together. They actually had to raise an exceptional tax, which has dropped them to the wow, we're screwed zone, where we're probably going to have to take that white piece, if not this turn, next turn, and we're going to have to surrender to France, if not this turn, next turn. Spain's looking pretty iffy. The Habsburgs, they got a bad roll on the reinforcements and had to actually cut the size of their army. Now, Spain could have pumped money into them to keep their army in place, but it wasn't in the cards with Spain having no cash. Christian's going to go away here. Turks actually raised up a significant sized army, prepared to go fight the Persians, and especially of interest, although we didn't do it, they passed the Muscat zone, which pushes down to here. The English and the French both crossed the Baroque zone. The Spanish didn't push by it, and the Latins and the Dutch can't. Now, Sweden, if they were involved in a war, would be above it. But very shortly, the Latins are going to be above it, so I'm just not going to worry about keeping track of that. If Sweden was in the war right now, they would have it. It's going to be a big factor, though, a big blow against Spain and perhaps the Habsburgs as well, who have less army. Let's see what the effect of it is. Baroque versus Muscat. Okay, that doesn't do much. Muscat versus Baroque. Big difference. That they're going to be firing on the D chart. And Muscat versus Baroque on the D chart there, whereas Baroque versus Muscat is on the B chart. So, both firing and the shock combat are going to be a BD combination. B is slightly better for fire than we've normally seen. If we start seeing Baroque versus Baroque, we see it runs on B. So the damages are going to get higher. You can see the attrition, or the number of the amount of damage done is higher, although the amount of morale hits is less than what C's do, which is kind of interesting. D's, of course, kind of suck in comparison anyway. But it's just something to keep in mind, is that these charts aren't, you know, linearly advantageous. But let's see about the morale here. Make sure. Yeah, the morale just stays at 3 for the rest of the game. And Tercios is long gone. The Turks have a weird situation, because once they pass Muscat, well, their pashas are only in arquebus. And I think they're not allowed to even go past Baroque until and unless they reform their army, which is something I don't think I've ever seen them successfully do. I may have seen it happen once. It's very painful. There's a good risk of their government just, going to hell instead of them succeeding in reforming their army. But right now they have the edge, at least with their regular troops, against the Persians. And then they have all these pashas to add some additional fodder, as it were. Alright. Okay, end of the first round here in the 29th turn. Let's see what we got. First of all, the Spaniards were able to push on. Now, they didn't have to retreat with this army because they had a conquistador on it during the retreat phase. They lost him during the death of leaders phase, but they're just continuing on. And they pushed into another territory. They've got to take one more Inca territory, and then the entire Incan Empire falls. They still have to explore certain territories like Potosi in order to, make use of them. But right now, they're almost there. They've already explored this one, so they can go there without any real major risk. And the fact that they get firepower first, and they're fairly far advanced with arquebuses, they're probably going to win. There's only 30 opponents, so the risk of a loss isn't that bad. The French pushed down and found more of the Mississippi, and also got themselves within striking range of St. Augustine. Not much Spain can do about that. Spain is really, really regretting not trying to get out of this war earlier. The treasure fleets were captured by the English. It's 140 gold the English got, but worse, Spain's got no money for next turn, or for continuing this turn, or anything else. They were completely counting on that. The Cardinal Infante got driven back in a battle with what little Spanish troops there are. Pappenheim's Austrians are having trouble back here, really getting reduced by the French. They knocked the French leadership out of the way. But there's still some reserve French troops kicking around, I think. I don't know, I haven't removed all the counters. Anyway, and the Turks. The Turks got hosed. Persians moved in, siege of Aleppo. Turks came in. First round of the battle looked really good. They outrolled the Persians. They have, I think, a higher technology at this point. They're sitting at the musket, where the Persians are below that. And, it was looking okay, but then they got outrolled on that second roll. They ended up actually breaking. There was no huge pursuit, but they took a decent amount of losses on Pasha's forces. No big deal there. The big deal is that they lost the battle, and lost a leader, and all kind of stuff along those lines. Oh well, it sucks to be Turkey. I mean, in general at this point in the game. Over in the Spanish, English, and Habsburg French battles, we're definitely seeing the advantage of this new technology level. It's a big jump. At least partially at fault for the victories that we're seeing. The English wish they could march in on Scotland while they have the advantage, but they can't. But Spain is really looking at, hey, I just got to give up. Okay, well, end of round 2. I got an extra French leader back. Over here, French ended up capturing what is it? Where the Florida? St. Augustine, where my Florida trading post is. Clever of me. Spanish finished off the Incans. Pretty much no losses there, just walking around. And so now they own most of that territory. They can start colonizing it. Other people could as well. But not much of it is accessible. This space is not unknown to anyone yet. This one would be, I think, the only thing that's accessible right now, that's known, that people can reach. Over here, Spanish got repulsed again. There's very little English force there stopping them, under 10 strength points, but you know, with the technological advantage and other things, you can get lucky and hold them off. If they get a decent die roll, though, the English army would just be destroyed. Not much happening over here at La Rochelle. They've gotten rid of the revolt, but they're still sieging it and not getting any traction. But they did take Franche-Comté. The Turkish army destroyed the Persian army completely. And that kind of frees the Turks up to start hunting more Persians, maybe to lay a siege, but it's hard to move forward in this kind of war. We'll see. That's about it for this round. Alright, another round down, and, well, the Spanish are hoping to get an assault in or finish Algarve with, what is it, Ebas, off fairly quickly. Ooh, they may have... No. I didn't notice it wasn't a port. Anyway. Hoping to get something out of this. They don't have a lot of money, so they can't really continue their fight for very long. They will shove that out, however. Maybe not yet. French are pushing down to get to Naples. They put their navy out there for the siege and also to help them deal with these Turks who are pirating on them. Let's see. Anywhere else something going on? Yes. Those aren't actually Turks. Algerians. The actual Turks have wiped out the entirety of the Persian army and now are working their way forward, hoping they can get some terrain back from the Persians and, you know, swing the balance a little bit more in their favor this time. Not been pleasant for them during the period where they were fighting both the Persians and Habsburgs. They're hoping to get out of this period in a little bit better shape. Anyway, onward. I think in a fairly short turn, 4 rounds ended up here. Not a lot changed. French weren't able to gain any additional territories. They're going to have to pull out of Naples. Spanish didn't get Algarve. Turks didn't get Mosul. You know, once you get a few rounds in, your chances of actually taking something are pretty low. Anyway, we're going to have to try to figure out what Spain's take is here. They're in real risk and don't have a lot going for them right now. They'd love to get Portugal, but they don't see a way around getting around the English army there. And without the income coming in from the gold fleets, with that getting intercepted right near Spain, really, there's not a lot they can do. They don't have another port they can slip it through. No matter what happens, it's this sea area. In early part of the game, you could slip it up into the Netherlands and get money there. But they don't have that option anymore, so it's not really, there's no real safe way for them to get that gold home at all. Alright, well, we'll see. Alright, and we push into the 1635 turn here. And, well, Spain had enough. They took the white piece from England, which gave England Tangiers as a part of their royal dowry. And the other big piece was Hormuz, the biggest colony or trading post that the Portuguese have left. It means the Portuguese are still in India, and at some point in the game that's going to mean England and the Portuguese probably have to go to war unless somebody takes that from them. Because there's, I believe, a goal to have everything in India, and that's something the English probably want. France gained, likewise, off an unconditional surrender. Franche-Comté, whatever was up here, well, I think it's Jacksonville. I don't know what it's called. Oh, St. Augustine here. Yeah. But they've got a new name that they have to use for it. And they took some Indian trading post instead, whatever. And the Turks were unable to get their peace. They're back. They're still at war. Everyone else is kind of at peace. You'll see a lot of Habsburg rulers here. We got people like Montecuccoli coming in. Big 30 Years' War guy. So there's some good leaders for the Habsburgs coming into play, but there's not really anything for them to do. If they had stayed at war with France, they could have continued with it. But the threat was just getting too great for the Spanish, and they looked at it and saw there's no way for them to advance. So the question is, well, do I cut my losses now? And they tried to gain Oporto as a concession from the Portuguese as part of this. They couldn't get that. So they pretty much pulled out of it. They're also going to owe France $150. That may bankrupt them. If they can't come up with that in income and loans and whatever, they go into bankruptcy. That further demolishes their manufacturers and everything else. And they really are worried that they're in serious, serious trouble. We can see the French have made sort of this arc in North America. The British have the coast, but the French are taking the interior pretty heavily. And, you know, most of that's actual colonies. So it's kind of an impressive situation. They're also pushing down into Angola to set up a trading post. Oh, this has to go someplace. We'll send it back to France. Okay. No clue that there's going to be any significant wars next turn, except the English Civil War breaks out. Beyond that, well, we'll see what happens. But a lot of the events have already fired for this period, a lot of the big ones. Still got some interesting ones like the Cossack Revolt to look at. Point-wise, well, the Russians have fallen below the French finally. The Dutch are plummeting. It's kind of interesting when I look at the Dutch in this game. This is, first of all, the first time and only time, mainly because I think it's required by the Risto events, or only possible from the Risto events, really, that the Dutch have conquered the entire Burgundian inheritance. Okay. It's also the only time I've seen them plummet this hard. The French just taking their aggression out on them, and the English and the French have been hunting their fleets. They've just not been getting victory points. And the amount of effort that they spent on the land war here to gain everything prevented them from really getting the kind of power in their overseas possessions that you want. Of course, they do have those couple interesting colonies over here on the west coast of the Americas. But, yeah, this is perhaps the bleakest that I've ever seen for the Dutch. They're kind of looking at, gee, when can I be the Habsburgs? This is the only time I've felt that way before from all the other games. Anyway, up it goes.